My daughter saw something completely awful today. We saw evil in a house we were cleaning. We saw a demon, and I know that sounds completely crazy, and I feel like I'm crazy, but like we both experienced it. It was two of us that had it happen, so I can't be crazy, right? Things were weird from the moment we got to the house. We were taking in multiple loads, and my daughter ran back out to the car, and I was going in by myself, and the temperature dropped out and it got really cold, like so cold that I was like, oh, I'm cold. And I looked over because I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and it looked like a woman was walking through the living room, like a shadow woman, and she went straight through the back doors. I don't acknowledge things like that, so I don't let it get me scared. I just pray. I know I have God. So I said a prayer and I turned the heat up and I acted like it didn't happen. We go on cleaning. Things are okay. I didn't know that she was having experiences too because she didn't tell me, and I didn't tell her what was happening to me either. So before we leave, I have these 2 back bedrooms to clean. So I do the first one and everything's fine. I go to the second one and I'm in there sweeping, and I feel someone walk up behind me. Like I felt cold push at me. I kind of froze, and then it yelled, "Fuck," really loud onto the back of my neck. And you know what's even creepier? It said it in my voice. So my daughter, who is 100 feet away, says, "Mom, are you okay?" Thinking I got hurt or something. And I was like, that wasn't me. And she's like, "What do you mean that wasn't you?" And I was like, it wasn't me. So I turn around because I'm not gonna take my eyes off whatever is behind me at this point. I'm trying to back away, and that's when I saw it. I've seen shadow people before, but you know, you see them out of the corner of your eye and then they disappear. This isn't what happened. It was behind me, and when I saw it, it had really long limbs, long fingers, and it had breasts like it was a woman, but it wasn't. And then it didn't have a face, and people always say that they don't have a face, but like I don't even know how to describe what I saw except it had no face. I'm a Christian. I believe in God, and I was praying, like, make it leave us alone, because I go back out in the living room. My daughter tells me that she's seen things out of the corner of her eye the whole time we've been there, and she tells me where she saw it, and she tells me what it looked like, and it was exactly what I've been seeing. I just didn't get a good look at it the first time I saw it. We both started to feel really sick to our stomachs, so we just hurried up and grabbed our stuff to get out of there. And the whole time we were playing Christian music and praying for it to leave us alone. We were freezing cold. We felt like we were gonna throw up the whole time. I can legitimately say that I met evil today. I keep seeing videos of people saying that the veil is thinning, and I wonder if that's why I saw what I saw. But I also just want to know if anybody else has seen this. Has anybody else seen that thing?
If you don't think demons are real, y'all might want to stick around for this story. So I'm going to tell you guys a personal testimony of mine about the first time I ever got delivered before, and the first encounter I ever really had with demonic entities, demonic presences, and why deliverance is so necessary in the body of Christ. So this was around 2019. I was trying to find God, but I was still living in an unrepentant lifestyle. Like, I was still engaging in sexual sin. I was cussing. I was partying. I was drinking. I was doing a whole bunch of things that, you know, would invite demonic forces into my life. Now, at this current time, I was in college, and I was about to go to nursing school. So I was finishing up a couple of prereqs, and I was in a class. It was one of the last classes that I needed to get into the program. So I remember sitting in this class, and there was like a group of us in the class, and a bunch of us were all applying to the nursing program. And something that we all had to take was a TEAS exam. Now, with this exam, like, for some people it was really hard, for some people it wasn't. And I'm not gonna lie, for me it was not that hard. And I took the study materials and I passed the test, and I remember coming to class and saying like, "Yeah, I passed, guys. This is the book I used, blase, blase." So there was a specific girl in my class who, at the time, even the first day I met her, like, if you guys watch my video about me having the gift of discernment, as soon as I saw her, I got that uncanny feeling of like, kind of be cautious with this girl, but like, I didn't really have any tangible evidence of anything she did to me other than just that feeling to be cautious with her, right? And she asked me, "Hey, like, you passed the exam, right?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I passed the test. Like, this is the study book I use. Like, I got it from Amazon if you want it, like, whatever." And she's like, "Oh, okay." I will also say this too, prior to this exchange, she did mention that she had been trying to take this TEAS exam for several years, and she just was not able to pass it, and she was at her wit's end, getting like desperate to pass the exam. Okay, that's really important. So after she says, "Oh, okay," I say, you know, if you want, like, I mean, since I'm done taking the test, you can have my book. Like, it's not really a big deal. Like, I don't really see anything of it. And she's like, yeah, actually, I'm going to need exactly your book. I'm going to need your book and your book only. So I was like, okay, like I said, I'll bring you my book. You can have it. I'll bring it tomorrow, though. I'm like, I'm not going to bring it today. And she's like, you better bring the book. Like, I'm so serious. You need to bring your book to me, like, immediately. And I'm still kind of like, okay, like, I'll bring the book for you. But I just thought the whole exchange was kind of off putting. And then after that, I didn't really think anything of it. So I go home that night and I tell my mom, like, oh, yeah, mom, like, this girl in my class, like, she was being kind of weird. Like, I told her I was going to give her my book so she can study. And she, like, was kind of, like, weird and, like, insistent that I bring the book to her and, like, made it a big deal. And, like, thought it was kind of weird, but I'll still probably give her the book anyways. But at the same time, like, I just thought that was super weird. My mom, my sister were all kind of, like, laughing it off. We're like, yeah, that's so weird. Like, you know, whatever. But at least you passed your exam type deal, right? So that night, I go to bed, it's a normal night, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, my mom comes running in my room, and she's like, did you give that girl your book? And I'm like, no, I didn't give her my book. Why? And my mom's like, do not, under any circumstances, give that girl your book. I just had the weirdest dream. I don't want to tell you what I saw, but I just want to say to you, like, it's weird. So I'm kind of like, okay, mom, like, you're being dramatic. Like, I have a Haitian mom, and you know, Haitian parents, they just always having dreams. So I didn't really think too much of it. I said, okay, mom, whatever. You know, I didn't give her the girl the book. And then, you know, I took the book and I put it in my bag to give it to her. But for whatever reason, I just could not give her the book. So this whole exchange happened like on a Monday. And this was Tuesday, now the new day. And I just remember that morning passed. I didn't see the girl in the class. And then I didn't end up giving her the book. But I started to feel very weird, and I couldn't explain why. Just for context, back in that time, I had never experienced depression, anxiety, or anything of that sort. So all of a sudden, that Tuesday, I just started feeling extremely just heavy. It's like my mind would not silence, and I felt very, very, just a lot of thoughts were racing through my head, but like stuff that I genuinely did not want to think about, and I could not stop the thoughts from forming. I also started to notice I felt like myself in an extreme mental fog, and it almost felt like unnatural, like I couldn't control it. And I started also getting these extremely blasphemous thoughts, these really weird thoughts, like just things that I'm like, this is not how I feel, but why do I keep hearing this stuff? And just to not make it like, so that TikTok doesn't take this video down, like I was getting thoughts for me to like myself. I was getting thoughts about God is not real, you're ugly, you need to die, nobody wants you, just a whole bunch of stuff that I never thought about before that incident. Now this continued for days, guys. I mean, this happened on Tuesday. By like Wednesday, Thursday, my friends started getting very concerned. Like they were almost like, what's going on with you? Like, this is not like you. Like, you're not responding. You're not talking. I just felt so low and so drained, and the thoughts were racing through my mind. I felt like I wanted to isolate myself. I was trying to read my Bible, and I kept getting blasphemous thoughts while I'm reading the Bible about this is fake, this is not real, God is not real, you're gonna go to hell, and all of these things. And I just could not shake the feeling. So like I said, prior to this point, I had never really knew about demons. I didn't really know about deliverance. I just knew that I didn't feel right and I felt funny. And every time someone mentioned anything to me about God, I immediately felt myself getting into like a rage. So since I lived with my mom at the time, she started to notice like my behavior was off, and she's like, what is wrong? And she kept saying like, I'm gonna pray for you. I don't know what's wrong, but I need to pray for you. And it actually got so bad that one of my best friends called my mom and said like, hey, I know you don't understand this, but your daughter needs to come to church this Friday because we need to pray for her, because this is not normal. Now at the time, my best friend was already actively walking in deliverance. She was already familiar with it. They already knew the signs of when somebody was getting oppressed by demonic entities. But I also was kind of skeptical, and I didn't believe that this was a thing. I just thought that I was going through something. So Friday comes, and my friend's like, please, 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 if you do nothing else, I need you to come to church. And if you feel the urge to really not come, you need to come even more. So that Friday comes, I feel so low energy. I feel so drained. I feel so overcome with the desire to not go to church because I just could not. For whatever reason, church seemed like everything I did not want to go to, and that was just so not in my character. I ended up showing up to church 30 minutes late, which, if you know me, I'm really not a late person. And as soon as I got in church, I just felt angry. Like an extreme amount of anger came over me. I felt tense. I felt worried. I felt like I need to get out of here. And I just remember sitting down in church and staring at the wall and feeling so upset. And all of a sudden, the more that people started praying, the more that people started talking, the more I started feeling like this uncontrollable urge to just like, I need to get out of here. And as soon as I was getting ready to collect my things to leave, one of the church members came over to me and she said, I need to pray for you. And the Holy Spirit told me to come up here and be gentle when I spoke to you. I just remember this lady came to me and said, did you try to give someone a book this week? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, that girl used that book to put witchcraft on you. And she said, and if you desire prayer today, like, we will break the demonic ties right now in the name of Jesus. And I was just like, yeah. And I remember they started praying for me, and I just started weeping and crying and feeling heat all over my body and feeling weak at the same time. And then also feeling like just this presence rise up out of me. And also I could feel it leave. And I just remember after the entire deliverance session was over, just feeling like so relieved. And ever since that day, I really went back into the Bible and really tapped in and saw like, yeah, Jesus spent primarily 95% of his ministry casting out demons, healing the sick. And it opened my eyes to the fact that, wow, like, we live in a world that is not flesh and blood, but it is purely spiritual, like God said. And guys, when I tell you, after that, God has opened my eyes to so many more things. Like, I can literally see demons manifest now in people's face, and it's just, y'all gotta stay prayed up out here.
Demons and what they look like. I'm about to tell you the details of the encounters that I have had with demons, the ones that I have seen with my own eyes. Before I go into the story about my dad and the time that I witnessed the demon try to possess him, I'm going to share a little bit about the backstory of some other instances. So, as y'all know, I'm sure you've heard of skinwalkers or different figures or people that can possess or haunt houses. Aliens, ghosts, all of those supernatural things are all demons. There is no such thing as aliens. There is no such thing as a ghost of a human. It states in the Bible, if we are absent from the body, we are either in heaven or hell. Like, there's no in between. Catholics like to say that there's purgatory. That does not exist. If you are not in the presence of the Lord or in hell, you're alive. If you are not alive, you're in the presence of the Lord or you're in hell. There is absolutely no in between. So, to go into the detail about the time when I physically saw demons outside of a physical body situation, it happened on numerous occasions. And what a lot of people don't want to accept is watching scary movies invite these in. Watching scary movies opens doors to the dark world. This all happened because my ex-husband was watching a Paranormal Activity TV show, just the ones that you see on DirecTV, and we're literally sitting there, and if, like, the TV's over here, right, I'm looking down the hallway, and it was like a hallway, it went like past the kitchen, then there was a bathroom, and then you could see there was like 2 rooms at the end. So at the end of the hallway, you could see like 2 doorways. And then there was another room over here, like the doorway I couldn't see. And so I'm sitting there watching TV, and like, he had started watching Paranormal Activity, and there had been like history of him seeing stuff in that house. But this happened after this with my dad. So I am sitting there just watching TV, minding my own business, and the kitchen light is on and the bathroom light is on. And I just see this black figure walk from the bedroom that I couldn't see into our bedroom. And it literally, they look like a black shape of a person, but you can't make out any features. Like you can see arms and legs and like body, but there's no facial features, there's no like hair features, there's no like digit like differentiation or anything like that. It is literally like a black shadow kind of thing, and they like float kind of. And then at the bottom there, it like tapers off, if that makes sense. They taper off, and it's not like solidified like feet, if that makes sense. Like there's legs, but it like dissipates into nothingness. And so I would see demons move from room to room. And if you look into demonic information, biblical demonic information about oppression and possession, bedrooms are one of the highest places in a house where they inhabit because they try to attack your dreams. They try to, if you ever feel like you have the weight on your chest when you're sleeping and you can't like wake up or speak or anything, that's telling you something. And in that same house, I was home alone. We had ADT security system, and I was armed as stay. I was sitting on the bathroom counter doing my makeup, and it was like midday, probably like 11 o'clock in the morning, because I was going to meet a friend for lunch. And my husband at the time was at his dad's shop, working on his truck. And I'm doing my makeup, just minding my own business, and I just hear running down the hallway. We had hardwood floors. And all of a sudden I like barrel roll out of, like I hop off the counter, barrel roll over our bed and grab my protection. And I'm just like sitting there waiting for somebody to come through the door. And then I'm like, wait a second. Like the alarm is on. And I look at my phone. There's no alerts. There's no alarms going off that somebody has broken in. And so I literally went through the whole house. So I was calling him, he didn't answer. And so I called his mom and I'm like, this is what happened. There's nobody in here, but I heard these things like boot footprints running down the hallway toward me. And I was like, I'm out of here. Like I've already seen these things. At the time I didn't know that they were demons. And so I went into the kitchen, and I went to go grab my wedding ring. We had a big bay window, and I went to grab it, and it tried to grab me from behind. And I was like, in the name of Jesus, because whatever is like, I'm feeling darkness, in the name of Jesus. I didn't know the differentiation between like skinwalkers and demons then. And so I just thought like this house was haunted, like so on and so forth. It was a demon. And I refused to go in that house after that, ever since that happened. So they're black in figure, like a shadow. And it's like all the ones that I saw were always like, I'm 5'9", so they were always like my height or higher. My ex-husband would see a little girl, so they can take the shape of kids. They can take the shape of somebody you know. I know people in my family who have seen them, and they literally embody somebody who has died in our family. And just like I said, if we are not present here physically anymore, and we're not alive, we can't be a spirit in this world. So going on to the story about my dad. I was 14 and I was editing my MySpace, and that ought to tell you how old I am. But our speakers didn't work. And so I ran into my room to go get my headphones so I could plug them in and listen to music, because I wanted to put in my top played, like my playlist. And where our computer was like kind of a part of the kitchen. And then we had like a step down living room, and then my room was on the other side. My dad was asleep in the chair. And as I'm running through the room to go get the living room to go get my headphones, I hear my dad like shaking in the recliner. Like I could hear him like breathing really hard and erratically. And then I could hear the chair like shaking. Like I thought he was having a seizure. So I turned my light on and I could see him like convulsing in this chair. And I kid you not, I ran over and I'm like, Dad, wake up. And he's like his eyes are like blinking and like he's having a seizure. I thought he was gonna die. And I turned the light on, and right as I turned the light on, boom, flew up in the chair, and he's looking at me. And the color, oh my gosh, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. It makes me want to cry even thinking about it. The color of his eyes and the whole like pupil, pitch black, and the whites of his eyes were blood red. And I was like frozen, and he's just looking at me with this deepest hatred, like this most evil, it gives me the heebie-jeebies even like thinking about it and visualizing it. Like the most evil look I've ever seen in my life. And then boom, my dad was dead asleep, fell back in the chair, was dead asleep. Naturally, I flipped out, started screaming, ran down the hall to my mom and like hid under her bed. And he came in and he was super upset at first. And then he tells my mom about his dream. They were at this house, and my mom had a photography business. So she got trapped inside the house, and there was like a black evil spirit flying around, and he was trying to get the door open. And you know, when you're like scared, you jump. Well, he was trying to get the door open, and then the door flew open, and the thing flew down, the thing that was flying around flew down his throat, and he was choking on it. And then he rebuked it in his dream, and it flew out. So when that demon was trying to possess my dad and he was shaking in the chair, the demon was trying to possess him, but because he has the Holy Spirit, he was unsuccessful. So be very mindful of your experiences. If you're seeing ghosts, if you're seeing like hauntings, all of the things, those are demons. If you're watching scary movies, you're inviting them in. I have not watched scary movies since, and that is why. I'm going to go pray now. If you have any more questions, drop them in the comments.
So I went to a psychic, and I'm convinced that I had a full conversation with the demon, and I'm going to tell you about it. Quick backstory, Jesus radically saved my life about 2 years ago, but before that, I was crazy. My dad died when I was little, so I really wanted to find a way to be able to communicate with him. So what better way, I thought, than going to see a psychic/medium. At that point, I was like dabbling in a lot of like tarot, witchcrafty kind of things. So I was like, this is like a great opportunity. So I go to see her. I pull up to her spot. She lives in Chicago. So it's like a house, like front, whatever. So she walks out to come get me. And immediately she's like so excited to see me. I walk in, key thing, the sage is burning. Okay, so say what you want about sage, but I feel like it is opening up to demonic entities. It's almost like how our worship is like incense to the Lord, like sage is like incense to the devil. That's in my opinion. And in my experience, I've seen that firsthand. So anyways, so she walks you in, the sage is burning, she walks me into a back room. And I'm like, okay, like this is kind of like different, but whatever. So we go into the back room, we sit down, she's like, can I say a prayer for us? And I'm like, in my head, I didn't know who God was at that point. Like I had grown up in like a Catholicism, but I didn't really like have a relationship with him. So I'm like not thinking anything of it. I'm like, sure. So sage is burning. She puts her head down, looks back up, starts praying in tongues, and her eyes roll in the back of her head. The only other time I've ever heard those specific prayers, and I know it was demonic, is because I have these like crazy demonic dreams sometime, and it was the same exact like voice, tone, and just like words that were coming out of her mouth. I understand you can pray in tongues spiritually in Christianity, but this was not that. I've heard that before. This was actually demonic. It sounded crazy, but I thought nothing of it when her eyes rolled in the back of her head. When I tell you this woman knew things about me that I've never talked about anybody, she knew talked to anybody about. She knew tattoos on my body. I was completely covered. She knew specific tattoos. She knew things that I had only ever told my dad. Demons know us because they study us. They can't predict our future because they don't know that. Only the Lord knows that. But they can like toy with those things, but they watch us, they study us. So in a situation like that, they can come back and say like, these are all the things that I've seen in your life because I've also been with you. I have been looking and I have been studying you. So at that point, as she's telling me all this, I'm like, this is so crazy. Like, I feel like I'm connecting with my dad. Mind you, during that time, she was like, I feel like you have some spiritual gifts. Like, I'd love to just get to know you more and like help you with those gifts. What the devil uses for negative, God will always use for good. Now I use my voice to glorify God. All that being said, going to a psychic is actually demonic, and I'm fully convinced that I had a conversation with a demon.
Whatever you're doing, stop scrolling. This is one of the creepiest exorcism stories you'll ever hear. Watch this.
One of the worst cases I've ever heard was from the Exorcist of New York City. The woman, a young girl, Juilliard, a violinist, and she was about to graduate. She was brilliantly talented, but all of her friends were getting job offers and she had none. And her friends remember always hearing her say the words, "I would do anything to be famous." Well, guess who's listening? It wasn't long after that she went to bed one night, had a dream, and she said in the dream was the most beautiful man she'd ever seen, naked, another sign, calling card of the devil. And he said, "You really want fame and power?" And she said, "I do." And he produced a contract, and he took his finger and slashed her finger and had her sign it in her blood. And then he touched the contract and it burst into flames and the ashes fell on the floor. So pretty easy to understand what happened, right? But what's worse is her finger was cut and the ashes were next to the bed. So within a couple of weeks, she signs this multinational tour, makes a ton of money, becomes very popular and famous on this circuit. And within a few years, she gets involved with drugs, goes to needles, gets HIV. Now she's dying in a New York hospital. And this whole thing comes back to how this started. And she calls her Filipino mother and tells her the story. And mommy calls the chancery. "I need an exorcist right away for my daughter." So Jim is the exorcist. He shows up and they tell him the whole story from the dream forward. And he says, "Okay, well, that's not good. You signed a blood covenant with the devil. So I'm going to need you to break that with the blood covenant. So you're going to write out the whole creed and then you're going to sign it in your blood." Well, the doctor's like, "She has AIDS. She's not signing anything in blood. Not going to happen." And he says, "Well, then you need to step out of the room because she needs to do this." And she did do it. And she signed the contract, the creed, and she convulses and flatlines and dies. So now the doctor comes back and he's really upset. The mother is out of her mind. They're all blaming the priest. Hysteria goes on for about 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden she jumps up off the table. She's back. And they test her. No HIV, no AIDS. She's completely healed. She then committed for the rest of her life to only do music that would honor God and to tell people about the reality of the devil and not to make deals with him.
What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments down below.
Okay, so I'm going to tell y'all another creepy story. Demons are real. So this story takes place a couple years ago in California. It's Robert and his family. So what happens is Robert's ex-wife, well, actually, he gets his kids like every weekend. So he usually travels to his ex-wife's house, but she lives a couple of hours away from where he lives. So he decides to go pick up his kids and come back, and the ex-wife decided she wanted to come back too. So they all you picked up the wife and the kids, and they were on their way back. So he stopped at a light and he saw this other little car. He said it was like a Pinto, but it was like an old jalopy, but he thinks it was a Pinto. And if y'all know what a Pinto looked like, it's just a little small vintage car. I've never seen a Pinto. I mean, the last time I've seen a Pinto might have been in the 80s, but just Google it if you don't know what that is. So Robert had a big pickup truck. I think it was an F-150, and it had tinted windows, and it was lifted. It was a lifted truck. So they were all in the truck, and they can look down at this guy in this Pinto, and he wouldn't be able to see them. So they start looking at the guy. All of them started looking at the guy, and the guy was in the car, and he was frantically looking for something. He was looking like under the seat. He was looking in the glove compartment. He was looking on the visors on the side of the car. And they could see him. And they felt kind of good looking at him because they know that this guy couldn't see him because of the tinted windows. So he said his wife and his two kids and everybody was just looking at him to see, what's wrong with this guy? Is he, losing his mind? It was like he was going buck wild trying to find whatever it was he was looking for. So all of a sudden, this guy stops and he freezes. And he puts his hand on the steering wheel on 10 and 2, like on a clock, the position of 10 and 2. And he turns and he looks up into the truck and he makes eye contact with all of them. And they're looking like there's no way this guy would be able to see them at all because of the tenant windows, but he actually makes eye contact with all of them. So all of a sudden, this guy starts smiling. And his smile spreads across his face from ear to ear. They say his chin drops down. And he said he knows that people can contort their body, and there's some people that can contort their faces, but they said there's no way humanly possible this guy could have had a smile like that. It was something like out the movies. And if y'all ever saw the movie Fright Night from the 80s, it's like a vampire movie. There's a scene where the guy's girlfriend gets turned into a vampire. You should see her smile. I mean, it was like that. It was from ear to ear, and it had like rows of teeth. So go on YouTube and Google that and look at the scene where, because that was the creepiest part of, one of the creepiest part of the movies, was when she turned around and you saw all those teeth. So they can't believe what they're saying. And he said that the guy's eyes were black, pitch black. There was no white in them at all. They were just pitch black. He said he floored it. I don't know if he ran the red light, but he floored it and he took off there as fast as he possibly could. They were scared to death. So he said he looked in his rearview mirror on his right side because that's where the guy was. And the guy must have been either driving slow or he didn't move at all, because he said they were getting further and further away from this guy. And he cannot understand why they saw that. Because I told y'all the story about the police officer that stopped this guy, and he went up to the car and the guy smiled the same way. He had black eyes. Well, he mentioned that as well, that story from the podcast. And he doesn't understand why he actually saw this demon, or why the trooper saw the demon. Because I guess some people can just see demons. I don't know. So I think I've seen a couple of demons. They were in a black form. I don't know if you want to call them shadow people or not, because they didn't look like shadow people. They looked like just black forms. Because I told you about that. One time I was at a hotel and I seen like a demon. And then in my bedroom when I was living in South Carolina, in this particular bedroom, I saw about 2 demons, and they had to be because they were all black, and one like actually had wings, and it's like I saw it so quick. It was like in the snap of a finger, but I know what I saw, and I don't know what else has black wings, and it was above my my dresser. And I mean, if it wasn't a demon, what could it be? Because see, I was sleeping. I was hard sleeping. And something woke me up. And as soon as I opened my eyes, it disappeared. Like I said, in a split second, but I saw it. The only other person I told that I saw that was my daughter. But that was his story, and he was just still wondering why in the world did he see this demon. He didn't understand it. So please like and subscribe and stay tuned for some more creepy stories.
Scary story time. Let's talk about it. But today I'll be sharing a real life story from one of my followers that I'll keep anonymous. She starts off by telling me that experiencing this made her realize that God and the devil is very much real. So let's get into it. So she said since she was 8 years old, she's always experienced really bad sleep paralysis. And she remembered one night her TV was on and there was this commercial playing. And she was sleeping, but she still remembered the commercial being on, but she was frozen. I'm talking about could not move, could not speak, could not move a hair, just frozen. And she remembered feeling this really dark energy. And that's when she seen her hair from the right side of her face blow up into the air. She said it was like a gust of wind. She stated once that happened, she heard the scariest, most hideous, I'm talking about never heard before kind of laugh ever. Like she said, this wasn't like any type of like evil villain laugh on a movie. She said this laugh was so demonic. she still remembered it to this day. She said that she could tell that the laugh was like making fun of her. And she said that she felt his breath in her ear. Mind you, she cannot move. And she stated that she knew it was the devil himself without a doubt. She said as this was happening, her rooms turned into like mirrors. The walls, the ceiling, everything was a mirror. And she was back into her reality, but the room started disappearing. She said, you know those black and white hypnotizing spiral-like pictures? But that was her room, but it was like almost like it was just like fading away and disappearing. And in that moment, she said she knew exactly where she was going. The devil or that demon was taking her to hell. She said it's really hard to describe, but she said she knew it was like a feeling of doom. And by then it felt like eternity, like she was in this state for forever. Like it got to the point where she was just like, at this point, whatever it is, if you're gonna take me or whatever y'all gonna do with me, just do it. But she only thought those words because mind you, she's in the sleep paralysis. She can't move, speak, or anything. She can only think it in her head. She goes on to say she accepted her faith at this point. She called out in her head, Lord Jesus, please help me. And she said like in a snap, like in an instant, her room and everything just went right back to normal. The same commercial that she stated that was on before she went to sleep was still playing. She said this was like the worst, scariest spiritual thing that has ever happened to her. Ever since then, she was sober. Like she said she could still hear his voice and his breath on her ear. But she said it showed her how powerful God really is. And she goes on to tell me that she suffered from a lot of like emotional abuse from her mom and her uncle. And like I always say before, these spirits and this stuff like to happen when you're going through trauma or something traumatic in your life. And she also stated how she lived in New Mexico in the middle of nowhere. And you know, it's a lot of deep-rooted history in New Mexico. And she's always felt something very demonic or evil on that land. And she goes to tell me how she was always very spiritually sensitive. And so was her grandfather. But that is crazy, y'all. This stuff is real. And these spirits attach themselves to so many different people based off their fear. And also, I just made a YouTube channel and the link will be in my bio.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, so my mom had a plethora of ghost stories growing up. She told us all of her stories. This is actually one of mine and hers together. She had night terrors her whole life. It was always known, and she told us it was always about this white house on a hill. Well, when she was about 7, she had a dream, and she only made it in the house once, and she was about 7, and she went inside she ran inside up the hill to the house, and there were skinned bodies all around, just blood, nasty gunk everywhere. And this was something she would have never even been able to imagine, because my grandparents were very strict Pentecostal. My mother couldn't watch the Smurfs because, Gargamel's an evil wizard, and that's witchcraft. She couldn't show her elbows. Like, it was none of that. She never had seen anything gory, nothing like that. So it was very bizarre. Well, she continued to have nightmares of this house, but every other time she just was being chased up to the hill by something invisible, and she got to the door, and then it would be over, and she'd wake up screaming. Well, I'm about 14, and we meet up with a lost long cousin, and she's staying in Virginia. Well, my mom's like, well, we're going to go stay with her for a couple months, and we get the address, we're driving up the hill, and my mom says, this is it. This is the house. This is the house I've had nightmares about. Now, that's some very white people and scary movie stuff right there. I was just not here for it. I was like, and we're going to stay here. Okay. Well, she got drunk one night with my cousins and her friends, and she came to sleep in my bed with me, and she was just like, just laid down. She's snoring a little bit, and then all of a sudden I hear Tiffany. Something whispered my name. And I was like, Mom, did you say my name? She said, no, I'm sleeping. And I was like, well, something said my name, and I'm getting a really heavy feeling. And she said, I'm drunk, so I can't do it. But you need to say, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave. And I did. And I've got goosebumps.
It was the scariest sound I have ever heard. It was not human. It was not animal. It was like a roar, a deep growl. This just, I don't even know how to explain it. It was so terrifying. And then, because it did that after I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave. And I heard, dun, 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 down the steps, down the other flight of steps. And I hear our front door slam, and it had bells on it. And the bells were just, ringing like someone had done slam the door. So I'm like, Mom, you got to come with me. I got to make sure the demon locked the door. That was rational to me. And she was like, okay, fine. She gets up with me. We check the door. The door's locked, but the bells are still like, kind of swaying. I was like, well, I'm thirsty after that encounter. You're going to walk me to the kitchen and we're going to get a drink and then we'll go back upstairs. Okay, we get my drink. I'm going back. We're passing under the staircase. There's a door to the basement, the cellar. And all of a sudden it starts just jiggling, shaking. It sounds like something's beating on it, trying to get through. I was like, let's go upstairs. It's the safe spot. Jesus is in that room or whatever. Let's go lay in there. And we went upstairs, and I put the cover over my head, and I went to sleep because I didn't know what else to do. And it was completely, utterly terrifying. And we stayed in that house for like 1 more month after that.
Let me tell you about the spookiest demonic encounter I ever had. So I used to be a worship leader at a church, and I used to be married to a worship leader at a church. It was our first year of marriage, and we had just moved into a very small apartment, and it was in kind of a rough part of town. And well, one evening, me and my husband were just kind of hanging out on the little patio area outside our front door. It was dark. It was probably about 9 o'clock in the evening. And as we're sitting there just kind of talking, I look over my shoulder because something catches my eye. And I see a man standing probably 15 feet from us, dressed in solid black. He had like a hoodie on, like had a hood over his face, and I couldn't make out any facial features, but he was just standing there, just looking at us. And I look at my husband and I go, babe, let's go. That guy's creeping me out. And my husband kind of looks over there and he goes, okay. And he kind of ushers me back inside. We go inside, shut the door, lock the door. And I was like, what was that guy doing? That was just super creepy. He was just standing there staring at us. And my husband looks at me and he said, look, I didn't want to say this while we were outside because I didn't want to scare you, but there was nobody there. I said, nobody there? He was right there, like 15 feet away. He was just standing on the sidewalk staring at us. How could you have not seen him? And he said, I swear to God, babe, I looked right where you were looking. There was nobody on the sidewalk. This story gets creepier. Not long after this, my husband wakes me up in the middle of the night. We're laying in bed together and he's like, babe, wake up. And so I kind of stir awake and I'm like, what? And he's like, are you the one sitting here tapping on the headboard? And I'm like, what? He's like, I've been laying here awake for like 30 minutes and I thought maybe you were just laying there like trying to prank me and scare me. I'm like, knocking on the headboard. He's like, yeah, it's just been going like just right behind my head. And I thought maybe it was your hand and you were trying to do it to scare me. And I said, no, I'm not knocking on the headboard. And he's like, okay, super weird. We go to sleep. He wakes up, I don't know how long it was, but he wakes up and he wakes me up again. He was like, oh my God, I just had the most demonic, terrifying dream. And I'm going to tell y'all about that dream and how it came true in part 2.
Hey guys, if you've been following along with our story, I'm going to tell you what happened next. So we reached out for help because we really, at this point, didn't know what to do when we were terrified to live in our own home. A friend suggested that we try to sage the house and put salt in the house. Do not do this. This only made things much, much worse for us.
A lot of people don't believe in evil spirits. People laughed at my brother and thought he was crazy. There was only a few of us who believed him.
So this is a video, TikTok that my brother-in-law made during this time because all of our photos and videos of this time have disappeared from all of our phones. This video is the only proof that we have left of what happened. But this is the result of us trying to use salt and sage. They had scratch marks all over their bodies. At the time, we were spiritually immature, and if I would have known better, I would have not have done the salt and sage. I would not recommend that. The only thing that's going to get rid of demons is the name of Jesus. Jesus is the truth, the way, and the light. So we went from being tormented by things moving and things shaking to now being physically attacked.
Let me give y'all a story time about a time that I encountered what I believe to not be a real person. And when I say not a real person, I believe that this person was not amongst the land of the living. Or I don't know. I don't think that she was a real person. So I think that she was an entity, or there was an entity inside of her. And so let me explain myself. If you don't believe in a supernatural realm or a realm outside of what you're living in now, then this video might be hard for you to grasp. So maybe about April. It was April. I had been going through a lot. I had been really sick, in and out of the hospital, just battling a lot. And I felt like I was like under spiritual attack, because every time I went to the hospital, they were having trouble finding things. It was just like a lot of back and forth. And it was just like, the attack was so great. I felt like it was just not of this realm. Like, you ever go through something so crazy, so traumatic, that you're like, God, this don't even make no sense. The stuff that's happening don't even make sense. Like, that's where I was at that point in my life. So this one particular night, I had been having some issues. I had been out of the hospital, but I was feeling better. But my mom came down to stay with me. She came down from out of town to be with me. So I was coming from work, and I worked out of town. So I was like maybe 3 hours away, and I was finishing up a contract. So this particular night, I was on my way home, and I called my mom. I was like, hey, do you need anything from the store before I get home? Because I got to pass the store anyway. Now, this store by my house, at that point, I had never been inside of the physical store, but I would always get gas at the pumps, like, because they have tap to pay. So I never had to physically go in. But this night, my mom was like, no, it's fine. And then she was like, well, you know what? You can stop and get me such and such. So I pulled up to the store. When I pulled up, I immediately noticed that it had to be about almost 10 o'clock at night. There was not a lot of people in the store. There was the clerk. There was one person at the counter playing lottery. And there was myself. And then there was a young lady in the store. Now, I went up to in my mind, I was like, well, let me scan the store and see if there's anything that I would like. Like, if I see a snack, I'm going to get it. So I just did a quick little 1-2 throughout the store. I didn't see anything. I was already tired from driving. So I turned around from the cooler to get ready to make my way toward the checkout counter. And in the aisle behind me, maybe about 5 feet away from me, there was a Caucasian girl. And when I turned around to her, she was facing me. She had nothing in her hands. She didn't appear to be shopping. I can't even put an age on her, guys. You know how normally you can guess about a person's age, or maybe generalize them and say she was a young girl, she was an older lady, she was middle age. I couldn't put age on her at all. When I turned around to her, when I turned around to look at her, she might have been about my height. She had shoulder length, strawberry blonde hair. Like, it was like it wasn't strawberry blonde. It was the reddish brown looking hair. It was about right here. And her face was ghostly pale. And I'm not one to judge off appearance, because I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for a long time. So I know that there are illnesses that can affect a person's appearance. This was not like that, y'all. This was nothing like I had seen before. She was the color of this binder. Her face was the color of this binder, but not in a skin textured way. Her face had a kind of almost textured look, like a flaky, floury, ill look. But that wasn't it. That wasn't what did it. When I turned around, she said, we locked eyes. Okay, when I turned around, we locked eyes because she started speaking to me. Her head was positioned in a very unnatural way. She was like, you're so pretty. And when we locked eyes, my heart dropped. I had a feeling of dread, of fear that consumed me. And she was giving me a compliment, but everything about her gave unnatural. Everything about her gave unreal. Her head that was tilted to the side like this, the way it cocked this way when she spoke to me, her face was pale. It looked like she was sick. Her lips were like a strawberry, like a cherry red. Her eyes were like a greenish brown. But it was everything about her body movements, everything about her tone, everything about the way she looked at me that scared me. My heart dropped, y'all. And I'm going to tell you exactly who she looked like. I don't know if you guys remember the movie The Exorcist, the original one. She looked exactly like the little girl that was sick in that movie. And I don't watch scary movies. I don't bring scary movies into my house. This is a movie that I saw as a child that I probably watched with my cousins growing up. That's how I was able to identify. And so I said, thank you. And I made my way to the counter. When I went to the counter, she didn't continue. I don't even know what she did behind me. I made my way to the counter and I checked out. I got in my car and I was so scared, y'all. I turned around and checked my back seat. I looked in the back seat. This is how scared I was. And as I'm backing out of the parking lot, the convenience stores, they have glass panes. So I'm driving really slow, looking like to see, is she checking out? And I saw her sweatshirt briefly in the store, but I didn't see it anymore. And then I looked at the cars, like I'm trying to make sense of this. I'm looking at the cars, like what kind of car could this young old lady be driving? Like, because she wasn't old enough to where she was just hanging out in the convenience store. She wasn't hanging out. There was nobody. It's not a convenience store where people loiter. She wasn't young enough to just be in there just doing nothing. She would have had a purpose. But I never saw her anymore. Like I saw her sweatshirt, but then it's like she turned around from the counter again. But y'all, when my husband called me, I said, "Can I tell you something?" He said, "What?" I said, "I think I just saw a spirit." I said, "Everything in me feels like she was not real." I said, "In the energy shift that I felt when I locked eyes with her, I'm terrified. I was scared driving home. When I got to my house, I told my mom about it, and my mom immediately said, Neek, she said, that wasn't a person. She said, that was a spirit. She said, and if she was a real person, God allowed you to see the spirit that was operating in her, or a demonic entity that was in her." Pause, y'all. I told y'all that I had been battling a sickness that month. So that morning on my way to work, I was listening to my prayer, my worship. I was listening to a sermon. And at the end of it, I was praying and I was asking God to reveal to me what was going on around me. And I said this prayer, like, reveal to me the spirits inside of people, like allow them to expose themselves, just because I just wanted clarity about the people that I was around and that was in my space, because I was just going through so much. Fast forward to this encounter, I had forgotten that I even prayed that prayer until my mom brought it back to me. She was like, and if it was a person, God maybe just allowed you to see the demonic entity that was operating on that person. Y'all, I don't know if y'all believe me or not. I don't know if y'all have ever experienced this or felt this way or not. Listen, everything in me tells me that I didn't encounter a real person, that she was not a real person, that was a spirit, that was an entity, that was something that God had allowed me to see with my spiritual eyes. The fear that I felt, the dread that I felt when I locked eyes with her, I looked at her, my heart dropped. I immediately felt panicked. I felt scared. I felt like, this ain't right. She ain't right. Her body movements was very unnatural. Her head was like this. She said, "You're so pretty." And her head popped up like this. Her voice, she didn't look young enough to possess a voice that sounded so childlike. "You're so pretty." That's how she spoke. I definitely believe that everybody walking the street with us is not amongst us. Let me know if y'all have ever experienced anything like that. But that's just my story.
You have to hear this. A man claims that he encountered a demon while working as security at a strip club. Protestant Christian YouTuber End Times Productions said that back in 2015, when he was 29 years old, he got hired as a security guy at a strip club in Key West, Florida. He said that he's a big guy, 6'4" and 225 pounds. And after a year, he worked his way up to becoming the main security guy there. He said that the club was open until 4 a.m. and that it was a very busy part of town. He referred to it as Party Central. He said that he has many stories about the place, but there's one night in particular that he will never forget. He said that one night at around 2:30 a.m., a woman tried to come into the club. He said that they would never let single women into the club because they would, quote, snipe the men. And they wanted all the men to stay there because they were paying the bartenders, the dancers, and the waitresses. So it was bad for business. On this particular night, the woman, who was around 40 years old, approached him and tried to make small talk. He said, "Okay, cool, but I can't let you in." She started to get a little upset and angry, but he said, "Sorry, no matter what you do or what you say, I can't let you in." She then grew more angry and started arguing with him. So he said, "Just leave before I call the police." What happened next is crazy. He said that she turned around and started to walk away. Then she turned back toward him with an evil grin on her face, but her eyes were completely black. There was no white in them at all. He said that shivers went up his spine and his blood ran cold. And he was thinking to himself, whoa, what just happened, as she walked out the door.
This spooky story submission is actually so terrifying that it led to the person who was telling me the story to end up in the hospital because of this. So for the story, we're going to call her Danielle, and I'm going to tag her below. We're calling her Danielle because that's what her childhood friends and her family used to call her. So until Danielle was about 14 or 15 years old, she lived on 78 acres of land. She said that in that 78 acres of land, only about 3 other people lived on that land. So it was a pretty secluded area, and Danielle really liked to play outside. That was her favorite thing to do. She loved watching the deers, the rabbits, but her favorite was climbing trees. Something that really bothered her though is that her mother would never let her play outside after dark, and we're talking like not even after the sunset, as the sun started setting. She didn't like this, but she obviously obeyed it because it was her mother, and so she had to. Until one day, her mother decides that she is going to go out to a friend's house, and Danielle doesn't want to go with her. But if Danielle doesn't go with her, it means that she's going to be left alone. Her and her mother decide that this is okay and that Danielle is old enough to handle this, so she stays home alone, and her mom leaves at about 3 p.m. Danielle decides that she's going to go outside and she's going to play in the woods. She said that she was outside climbing trees when she felt this overwhelming feeling of being watched. It was overwhelming, and it felt like it was coming from above her. But she keeps looking up, and she's not seeing anything, so she's thinking that maybe her mind's just playing tricks on her, and she kind of shrugs it off. At some point, it starts to get dark, and she knows that she's supposed to go home, but she doesn't want to go home, and she's home alone, so she can do what she wants. So she decides that she's going to stay outside. At around 7:30 p.m., when the sun had already set, she starts hearing a noise, and it's her mother calling her name. She's calling for her to come home. So Danielle is like, oh crap, I gotta get home. So she starts walking home, but she still has this overwhelming feeling of being watched. When all of a sudden, she starts hearing twigs and leaves snapping behind her. So she looks behind her, but she doesn't see anything. She finally gets home, and she realizes that her mom is not home. So while she's outside, she calls her mom, and she's like, Mom, were you home? Like, I just heard you calling my name. And her mom was like, I have not been home this entire time. I'm still at my friend's house. She said this really freaked her out, and she decided to turn around and look in the woods, and she looked over and she sees a dark figure standing outside in the woods. This freaks her out, so she runs inside, she slams the door, and she deadbolts it shut. She then goes over to the window and she looks outside of her blinds to see if it's still there, and of course it is not there. She again decides that she's going to shrug this off. Maybe her eyes are just playing tricks on her, and she decides to make dinner. This feeling of being watched, this overwhelming feeling, follows her until the morning. And she said that she didn't feel like she was being watched by one thing, she felt like she was being watched by like several things. She decides to go to her camera because they have cameras in the house, and there's a new video popped up, and I'm assuming that they were motion censored. She didn't say in the email, but she did say that there was a new video, so she looks at it and she doesn't see anything, but she hears this tapping sound on their front door. It's important to note right now that their front door is a big metal door that her mom had put in when they very first moved in. Nothing is on the camera, she cannot see anything, so she decides that she's gonna go outside and she's gonna look at the door. Outside on the door, there are huge claw marks on this metal big door. She said that she then realized that this could not have been an animal, because if it was an animal, number one, why is it trying to get into her house? And number two, how could it make these claw marks on this big metal door her mom had installed? So this really freaked her out, so I think her way of just coping with things was just shrugging it off. So she does just that, and she goes out in the woods again, and around 7:50 p.m. she's playing in the tree, climbing it again, and she gets that overwhelming feeling again. This feeling again is feeling like it's coming from above. So she decides to look above her again, and what she saw was terrifying. She said that she looked up, and when she looked up, she saw the most figure she had ever seen in her life looking at her. Not only was it looking at her, but it was calling her name, her real name, not Danielle, her real name. But not only was it calling her name, it was in her mother's voice again. Danielle is absolutely terrified at this, and she starts bolting home, and the entire time she's running home, she can hear this thing running after her. She calls her mother on her way home, and she was absolutely bawling her eyes out. Her mom gets home, and she assures her that it's nothing, and that everything is going to be okay, and that it's not a big deal, and that she was probably just seeing things. Danielle did say that this experience was so distraught to her and scared her so badly that she actually ended up being hospitalized for 2 or 3 months because of it. She said she couldn't eat, sleep, drink, nothing. The crazy thing about this is that this is not even the only thing that happened to Danielle. Something else happened to her that even traumatized her further. This is getting really long, so I'm gonna have to make a part 2 on it. If you guys want to hear that second part, that partly also contributed to her being in the hospital, then drop it in the comments and I will make a part 2 and tell you guys that story. That story is even scarier. So what do you guys think of this? What do you guys think this was? Like, this terrified her so much that she's still in therapy to this day. And the second thing that happened to her definitely didn't help at all. So drop in the comments for part 2. Also, if you guys have anything to say to her or anything to like help her feel better, please also drop that in the comments. She could use all the love and support that she could get right now. She is going to see it. I am going to tag her. Thank you so much for your submission, Danielle. And thank you for letting me tag you. You are the first person that has let me tag you, so I appreciate that. And if you guys want to send me your true scary stories, then there's an email in my bio. Just go ahead and email me there, and I will come on here and I will tell your story. You do not have to be tagged if you do not want to. My name is Kaisa. I tell you scary stories that are true every single night. So if you like that, then hit that follow button, engage from the bottom up, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much and have a spooky night.
So this is the story of when someone brought a literal demon in my freaking house when I was a teenager, and it attacked me. At this time, there were 2 other people living in the house with me and my mom, and I was friends with this person at the time. Like, we were really good friends, and my friend and I kind of started to drift apart. Like, she started acting really different, acting really weird, almost like I got the vibe that there was some dark energy around her, okay? Like, there was some demon shit going on. Like, there was something affecting her. She was not being herself. Like, we were absolute best friends, and then she was just a different person. And my mom and I had started talking about it, like, something feels negative. Like, my mom could always feel if there's something in the house. I can also feel things like that. Like, I can walk into a room and I can tell you straight off the bat if there's something bad in it, or if there's something bad on someone, and I'm getting that vibe from her. One night, they're both gone. It's just me and mom in the house. So I go to take a shower, and this is the same shower that they were using. I was taking a shower in the guest shower. So I'm taking a shower. I just need, I don't know, I was probably just washing my hair. I was not shaving. I did not have a razor in my hand. No razor touched me. All of a sudden, my leg starts burning. I look down, my leg is pouring blood. You know when you cut yourself and it just like pours blood? I don't know why it bleeds so heavily, but it does. It also burns really bad when the water starts hitting it. Like, you know when you cut yourself. But I wasn't shaving. My leg starts burning and pouring blood like I was shaving and cut myself, but the cut was like this long. Like, it was huge. And I was like, what is this? So I finish my shower, get out, and I go show my mom. I'm like, hey, my leg is bleeding. Like, something cut me. And she was like, I know exactly what it is. She said, something came in the house on her, and it's here, and it just attacked you. So she goes, and my mom, my aunt, and our family, we keep holy oil. We keep a small bottle. My mom had a specific bottle, and it was always full of holy oil. It was always blessed, which makes it holy. You know what I'm saying? She went and got her oil. She went and got her Bible. She started casting it out. First you cast it out, and then you can read the 91st Psalm. She started verbally casting it out. When I tell you, when she started casting that thing out, I saw it run. And when I tell you, this is how you know it's demonic. I've mentioned this in videos before. When you see a black mass, that's how you know. It was a black mass, like a giant shadow, shot from my bathroom across the hallway into the bedroom that was across from the bathroom. And it went into the closet. We followed it into the room, and it was in the closet. So we followed it, and she's doing her rebuking and casting in the name of Jesus. Now, if you don't know, when you are casting something out like that, you have to open a door or a window. It has to have a way out. So she told me, go open the front door. So she's telling that thing, get out. You're not welcome here. You can't be here. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Open the front door, and I promise you, that black shadow, mass, whatever you want to call it, shot out the front door. Now, after she got it out, we went through and blessed the entire house, and she said, now, if there are several things on her, when she comes back home, the friend, she will not, either she will change, she'll go back to normal, or she will be so uncomfortable that she will leave. I kid you fucking not. She moved out that next day. She couldn't stand to be in our home. She did eventually end up going back to normal, but at that point in time, I don't know what was happening, why why she had this energy on her, but she couldn't stand to be in our blessed home. So she literally moved out the next day. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my story. It is true. If you don't believe in the demonic stuff, I don't know why you're here. But yeah, that is my story. That is what happened. Be careful